Hi everyone, welcome back to Motivate. I'm Dr. Mohi Saraugi, a GP by profession, but here I'm swapping prescriptions for perspective. Last month I watched a documentary series called Balance, a Perimenopause Journey. It follows the journey of two Jain monks as they navigate perimenopause, sharing their experiences and seeking medical understanding alongside other women and medical experts. I found it a powerful series. What stayed with me was not just the medical discussion, but the setting. These were women who had renounced possessions and chosen lives of simplicity and spiritual practice. We often imagine that people living such lives might simply endure discomfort quietly. But the documentary showed something very human. Even they experience physical and emotional changes, and they too need understanding and medical care. What stayed with me most was the honesty of those conversations. Monks often live very private lives, so hearing them speak openly about their experiences felt particularly meaningful. What was equally encouraging was seeing how conversations with senior monks and teachers opened the door for change, showing that faith and tradition are not static but capable of adapting when compassion and knowledge come together. Watching the series gave me a sense of connection and satisfaction because I am a Jain, though my own path has involved medical textbooks rather than living as a monk. For those less familiar with it, Jainism is one of the ancient Indian spiritual traditions, often considered older than Buddhism, though both emerged in ancient India. At its heart, Jainism is less about belief and more about how you live. It teaches non-violence, compassion, self discipline, awareness, and perhaps most importantly, non attachment. Both traditions place great value on awareness and compassion, and both recognize something fundamental, that inner balance matters. Jain monks dedicate their lives fully to these principles, even in small daily actions. Most Jain families, however, live ordinary modern lives while still holding many of the traditions and values of the faith. Mine certainly did, perhaps with a little more guidance from my grandparents who followed the tradition more closely. But nothing was rigid or imposed on us. We grew up with stories and traditions, but also with the freedom to adapt and question. In many homes, traditions naturally coexist. One of the other reasons this documentary affected me so deeply is because of where I grew up. My childhood home stood directly behind a Jain temple. Our home and the temple shared a wall. When we opened the windows, we saw a courtyard and lush gardens rather than traffic. Peace and stillness were literally outside the window. I spent many years observing the monks who would stay there for a few months at a time before continuing their journeys. As a child, I had a rather innocent misunderstanding. I believed we owned the temple simply because there was a small door at the back of our home that opened directly into the temple grounds, which seemed like convincing evidence at the time. Of course, I later learned that temples, like churches, do not belong to individuals, they belong to communities. That house is no longer home. Life moves, people move, circumstances change. The places that once felt full of life and held everyone together slowly grew quiet and empty, and in time became beautiful memories. Over the past few months, I have found myself returning to the teachings I grew up with, especially the idea of non attachment. It sounds simple, it isn't simple. Learning how to care deeply without becoming bound is lifelong work. You might wonder why a GP is talking about Jainism on a medical podcast. Because medicine does not exist outside culture. To care for people properly, doctors need to understand how people live within traditions, dietary patterns, fasting practices, belief systems, and moral frameworks that shape their health decisions. Sometimes faith shapes what treatments people feel able to accept. For example, some traditions avoid certain medications during fasting periods, while others, such as Jehovah's Witnesses, may decline blood transfusions on religious grounds. These decisions are deeply personal. Medicine works best when it respects the person, not just the diagnosis. Different traditions use different languages. Some speak of faith, some of philosophy, some of science, but often they are describing the same human experience. Across cultures, philosophies, and sciences, one idea appears again and again: breath. Every human story begins with a breath. Before language, before thought, before identity, there is breath. And when life comes to an end, it ends the same way, with the last breath. Between those two moments, we breathe about 20,000 times a day, and yet most of us give it almost no attention at all. And that is where today's conversation begins. So let's begin with the breath itself. Breathing is constant, automatic, and largely invisible. Perhaps that is why we underestimate it. Modern medicine is excellent at treating disease. We have powerful drugs, advanced imaging, and remarkable surgical techniques. But health is also shaped by how we regulate stress, how we recover, and how we maintain balance within the body. And few processes influence that balance as continuously as breathing. In medicine, we measure breathing in terms of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Oxygen fuels cellular metabolism, and carbon dioxide is removed through ventilation. Without oxygen, brain cells begin to suffer injury within minutes. That is straightforward physiology. But breathing is also deeply connected to the nervous system. Each breath subtly alters heart rate, blood pressure, and even patterns of brain activity. This is because breathing operates in two worlds at the same time. It is automatic, continuing while we sleep or are unconscious, yet it is also voluntary. We can slow it down, deepen it, or change its rhythm whenever we choose. That dual control makes breathing unusual and gives us access to systems that are otherwise automatic. Much of that regulation happens through the autonomic nervous system, the network that controls heart rate, digestion, temperature, and stress responses. It has two main branches: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. The sympathetic system prepares the body for action. Heart rate rises, blood pressure increases, attention sharpens. This is the fight or flight response, essential for responding to challenge or danger. It was designed for short bursts of activation. Modern life, however, tends to keep this system switched on for longer than it was built for. Deadlines, constant notifications, and ongoing mental stimulation mean many people spend much of the day in a state of low level sympathetic activation. Over time, that can affect sleep, emotional regulation, and cardiovascular health. The parasympathetic system works in the opposite direction. It supports restoration and recovery. Heart rate slows, digestion improves, the body shifts into repair mode. Health does not depend on being calm all the time. It depends on flexibility, the ability to move between activation and recovery when needed. You may have heard a great deal about the vagus nerve, particularly on health podcasts or on social media, where it can sometimes sound like the solution to everything. The reality is more nuanced, but what we do understand is that the vagus nerve is one of the main pathways of parasympathetic regulation. It connects the brain to the heart, lungs, digestive organs, and plays a central role in resilience. One way this balance shows up is through heart rate variability, the small variations in time between heartbeats. If you wear a watch or ring that tracks sleep and recovery, you may already see this number. Higher heart rate variability generally reflects a nervous system that can adapt more easily between stress and recovery. And one of the simplest ways to influence the system is through breathing. Slow, steady breathing tends to increase parasympathetic activity. Faster or irregular breathing tends to increase sympathetic activation. Many heart rate variability biofeedback programs guide people toward a slow rhythm, often around 5 or 6 breaths per minute, because it tends to support autonomic balance. That bridge between something automatic and something we can consciously guide is one of the reasons breath has been studied for centuries across both science and different traditions. But long before heart rate monitors and wearable devices existed, people were already observing the relationship between breathing and internal state. Across cultures, breath has rarely been seen as merely mechanical. In Sanskrit, the word prana refers to breath or vital energy. In Greek philosophy, pneuma carried a similar meaning, breath as the force that animates life. Even the Latin word spiritus, from which we get the word spirit, originally meant breath. Different cultures use different words, but they were pointing toward the same observation. Breath and life are inseparable. Today, I want to focus on one particular framework that explores this relationship in a structured and practical way. One of the most detailed traditional systems devoted to observing breath patterns is known as Swara Yoga. And this is where ancient observation begins to meet modern physiology. Sometimes the simplest tools are the ones we overlook most easily. Modern medicine is built on evidence, and rightly so. But scientific understanding often begins with observation. We accept exercise as medicine without hesitation today, even though for centuries it was practical knowledge passed down through experience before it was formally studied. Breathing traditions developed in a similar way. Not every traditional idea aligns with science, but some observations align closely with modern physiology. Swara Yoga is one example where ancient observation and contemporary science appear to meet. The goal here is not to replace science with tradition. The goal is simpler than that, to learn, to understand, and then to decide what is useful. So I invite you to approach this not as a belief system, but as something new you're learning. Now, a quick note so we are clear about what we are and are not doing today. Traditional yoga also includes practices known as pranayam. Pranayam refers to controlled breathing techniques that intentionally modify the breath, including alternate nostril breathing, structured breath counts like 4-4-4 breathing, or techniques where the exhalation is slightly longer than the inhalation. For example, breathing in for 4 seconds and out for 6. Swara Yoga begins somewhere simpler. It starts with observation. Before we try to change the breath, we learn to notice it. Once you notice the pattern, you can decide whether to influence it. Awareness comes first, change comes second. The term swara comes from Sanskrit and has several meanings, including sound, tone, or musical note. But in this context, swara refers to the flow of breath, particularly how air moves through the nostrils and how that movement may relate to our internal state. And the core idea is this: breath does not flow equally through both nostrils all the time. Usually, one nostril is slightly more open than the other, and that dominance shifts periodically throughout the day. Modern physiology confirms this phenomenon. It's known as the nasal cycle. Subtle alternating changes in blood flow within the nasal tissues affect how open each side feels. Over time, airflow shifts naturally from one nostril to the other. Ancient practitioners recognized this pattern through observation alone. No instruments, no measurements, no apps, just attention. And honestly, the next part is the best bit because you can check this for yourself right now. So let's try something that takes less than a minute unless you're driving, operating machinery, or attempting something adventurous at the gym. Just sit comfortably and breathe normally. You can even do this lying down. Place a finger just below your nose and notice your breath. Which nostril feels more open, right or left? Most people quickly notice that airflow is stronger on one side than the other. That often comes as a small surprise because we assume both nostrils are working equally all the time. If one nostril seems to be doing most of the work, don't worry. That is exactly what we expect to find. If you currently have a heavy cold, significant nasal blockage, or a dramatically deviated septum, your results may be less enlightening. That's just anatomy having a say. The breath can only do what the nose allows. The nostril with stronger airflow represents your current swara, your current pattern of flow. Traditional Swara Yoga describes these patterns symbolically. Right sided breathing is often associated with activity and outward engagement. Left sided breathing is associated with calmer, more inward attention. In traditional texts, these patterns have specific names, but today we'll keep it simple and stick to right and left. As a GP, I want to frame this carefully. This is not a diagnosis, and it's certainly not a personality test for your nostrils. But many people notice something interesting. When the right nostril is more dominant, people often feel slightly more alert or externally focused, more switched on. This pattern is sometimes associated with relatively higher sympathetic activity. When the left nostril is more dominant, they may feel calmer or more inward, and this is often linked with relatively greater parasympathetic activity. Think of it as a snapshot. Where is my system sitting right now? Not good or bad, just information. At certain times, airflow becomes more evenly balanced between both nostrils. Physiologically, this often corresponds to a transition phase in the nasal cycle, a handover moment when the dominance shifts from one side to the other. It's often brief, more like a crossover than a permanent state. In traditional Swara Yoga, this balanced phase is considered favorable for calm reflection. Whether or not you take that literally, it can be a useful moment to pause. Breathing patterns can also vary depending on how you wake. After restful sleep, breathing may feel steadier, and you may sometimes notice a tendency toward left sided airflow. Waking under stress or time pressure may feel more activated, sometimes with stronger right sided airflow. Again, not a rule, not a test, just a morning snapshot. And for those of you working on metabolic health, this matters more than we often realize. The way we start the day shapes appetite, caffeine habits, stress responses, and how quickly we slip into go, go, go mode. Awareness gives you a small pause before autopilot takes over. Some traditional practices suggest noticing which nostril is more open when you wake and stepping forward with the foot on the same side as you get out of bed, a symbolic way of starting in alignment with the body's current state. You don't need to adopt that, but the principle underneath it is sensible. Working with the body is often easier than working against it. So far, we've talked about observing the breath. You may have already noticed which nostril is more dominant for you right now. And you might even begin to wonder, does that reflect how I'm feeling in this moment? The next question naturally follows, can we influence the pattern? Interestingly, the answer is yes, at least to a small degree. Breathing patterns interact with the nervous system, and airflow can also change depending on how we position the body. For example, lying on one side tends to increase airflow through the opposite nostril. So, if you lie on your right side, the left nostril often becomes more open. If you lie on your left side, the right nostril tends to open. This shift can occur within a few minutes. No incense required, no chanting necessary, just anatomy and gravity doing their thing. Another simple approach is unilateral nostril breathing, lightly closing one nostril and breathing through the other for a short period. For example, if you want to try a calming version, close the right nostril lightly with your thumb and breathe slowly through the left nostril for a couple of minutes. Keep the breath smooth and comfortable. A simple rhythm is about 4 seconds in and 4 seconds out. Many people find left sided breathing can help settle mental overactivity or physical tension, corresponding to the parasympathetic recovery side of the nervous system. If you feel heavy, sluggish, or mentally foggy, you can try the opposite. Close the left nostril and breathe through the right for a couple of minutes. Many people find this pattern feels slightly more activating, corresponding to the sympathetic, more alert side of the nervous system. Again, these are tendencies, not rules. Your body may respond differently on different days. A few practical notes matter here. Keep it gentle. If you feel dizzy, stop. And this is not a replacement for medical treatment. It's simply a way of working with the body's own regulatory systems. Studies on unilateral and alternate nostril breathing suggest that breathing patterns can influence autonomic balance. The research is not uniform and it doesn't validate every traditional claim, but it does support the central idea. Breath influences physiology in meaningful ways, and Swara Yoga begins with something even simpler than technique. It begins with observation, practiced over time. If you've been listening to this podcast, I recently started a series on metabolic health, and this episode sits within that broader conversation. Breath is not only a marker of life, it supports the processes that allow our cells to produce energy. So, something as simple as breathing patterns can influence how the body regulates energy, recovery, and internal balance. And that's one of the reasons understanding breath is such a useful starting point. So, if you take one thing from today, let it be this: your breath is always available to you. Sometimes balance begins with something as simple as noticing the breath, and sometimes even a small moment of awareness can shift how the body responds. I hope something today stirred a thought, gave you a smile, or simply made you pause. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Mohi. Until next time, stay motivated. And remember, paying attention to the breath is simply a way of coming home to yourself and noticing what was there all along.